Stepmother called me selfish for refusing to pay her loan after Dad died. She never knew I own our mansion, now her suitcases are packed, but she still doesn't know yet. The weight of my father's ring felt like a lead brick on my right hand, but it was the deafening silence in the mansion, usually filled with his booming laugh, that truly screamed betrayal. I stood, a hollow shell in black, watching the last of the mourners file out, their condolences echoing like empty champagne glasses in the grand hall. At 28, I never expected to be standing here, the heir to a fortune, yet feeling utterly bankrupt. Darling, you should really freshen up. Your mascara is running. Lexi's voice cut through my thoughts, smooth as silk, yet sharp enough to draw blood. My stepmother, I should say, stood beside me, not a hair of her perfectly coiffed blonde bob out of place despite the long, exhausting day of performing grief. Her black dress, impeccably tailored, seemed to absorb all light, leaving her untouched by the sorrow that clung to the very air around me. "I'm fine," I replied, turning away from her practiced concern, a knot tightening in my stomach. The mansion felt different now, colder, emptier, its vastness pressing down on me without Dad's vibrant spirit to fill its halls. "As you wish." She placed a hand on my shoulder, her diamond rings catching the dwindling light, each facet winking like a malevolent eye. "We need to discuss the estate arrangements tomorrow. There are some financial matters that require immediate attention." Before I could respond, Mauricio, our butler of 20 years, appeared at my elbow, a quiet shadow against the marble. "Miss Cynthia, might I have a word in private?" Lexi's perfectly manicured nails dug slightly into my shoulder, a possessive warning, before she released me with a sigh. "Of course. I'll be in the study if anyone needs me." Her heels clicked against the cold marble floor, each step a declaration of ownership, as she retreated. Mauricio led me to the kitchen, the familiar hum of the industrial refrigerator a stark contrast to the oppressive quiet of the parlor. His presence, usually a comforting anchor, now felt charged with an unsettling urgency. He glanced around, his movements precise, before reaching into his jacket pocket. "Your father asked me to give you this, Miss Cynthia. After the funeral." He handed me a sealed envelope, yellowed slightly with age, its edges crisp. He was very specific about the timing. My hands trembled as I took it, the paper surprisingly heavy. "When did he give this to you?" 3 months ago, just before his diagnosis." Mauricio's eyes, usually guarded, held something I couldn't quite read, a flicker of sorrow, a hint of steel. "He made me promise to ensure it reached you directly." I broke the seal, the crackle of old paper echoing in the vast kitchen, and unfolded the letter with shaking fingers. Dad's distinctive, slightly sprawling handwriting filled the page. "My dear Cynthia, if you're reading this, I failed to tell you the truth in person, and for that I'm sorry. The mansion, our home, belongs to you. It always has, through a trust your mother established before she passed. Lexi doesn't know. The official reading tomorrow will reveal everything. But I needed you to know first. Be careful, sweetheart. Watch the shadows. Love, Dad." "Mauricio, did you know about this?" I looked up, but his expression remained carefully neutral, a skill honed over decades of discreet service. "I know many things, Miss Cynthia, including that Mrs. Bryant has been making calls to real estate agents this past week." A laugh, hollow and bitter, bubbled up from my chest, catching in my throat. "She's trying to sell my house. Your stepmother has always been ambitious." Mauricio's voice dropped lower, a conspiratorial whisper. "But there's more you should know. The safe in your father's study." "Cynthia." Francesca's voice rang out from a hallway, cutting through Mauricio's words. My best friend burst into the kitchen, her dark curls wild, her eyes wide with concern. "Where are you hiding? I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said automatically, then caught myself. "Actually, no. No, I'm not fine at all." I glanced at Mauricio, who nodded almost imperceptibly before disappearing through the service door, leaving us alone. What I found next changed everything. Francesca grabbed my hands, her touch grounding me. "Talk to me." What's going on? Dad left me a letter. I squeezed her fingers, the paper crinkling in my grip. The mansion is mine, Fran. All of it. And Lexi's been trying to sell it behind my back. That snake. Francesca's eyes widened, a mixture of outrage and disbelief. No wonder she's been hovering around that sleazy lawyer all day. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, we heard voices from the study. Lexi's smooth tones, punctuated by a man's voice I recognized instantly. Dan Parker, the family lawyer who'd once asked me out and never quite gotten over my polite rejection. The will reading is tomorrow, I whispered, tucking Dad's letter into the pocket of my dress. Let them plot. Tomorrow, they'll learn that the house they're trying to sell isn't theirs to sell. Francesca squeezed my arm. Want me to stay tonight? I shook my head, straightening my shoulders, a sudden resolve hardening my spine. No. I need to face this alone. But first, I glanced toward the study, a predatory glint in my eye. I think it's time to see what's in Dad's safe. Cynthia, Francesca warned, her voice laced with apprehension. Be careful. Oh, I will be. I smoothed down my black dress, Dad's ring catching the light. After all, I'm not the one who should be worried about losing everything. As I headed toward the study, my heels echoing against the marble floor my mother had chosen 30 years ago, I felt something shift inside me. Grief was still there, raw and real, but now it had company, determination, anger, and a fierce desire to protect what was mine. Let Lexi play her games. Tomorrow, she'd learn exactly whose house she was living in. Your father always said this place had more secrets than a confessional, Francesca whispered, her voice barely audible as we crept into Dad's study after midnight. The leather-bound books and heavy curtains cast strange, dancing shadows in the dim light of our phone flashlights. Help me move this painting. I reached for the massive landscape that had hung behind Dad's desk for as long as I could remember, a grand scene of a hunting party. My hands trembled slightly as we lifted it, revealing the steel wall safe I'd only glimpsed a handful of times throughout my life. Do you know the combination? Francesca asked, her breath held. I smiled, remembering Dad's cryptic words from years ago, a playful riddle he'd never expected me to take seriously. My birthday, Mom's birthday, and the day they met. My fingers spun the dial with practiced precision, remembering the sequence, and the safe clicked open with a satisfying thunk. Inside, stacks of folders and documents filled the space, an archive of a life. But what truly caught my eye was a small USB drive, labeled simply insurance, and a thick manila envelope with my name on it. Look at this. I pulled out a stack of photos. They showed Lexi at various cafes and restaurants, meeting with different men. The dates stamped on the backs went back 5 years, while Dad was still alive. Francesca peered over my shoulder, her eyes widening in disbelief. Is that Dan? Your father's lawyer? And that's James from the investment firm. My stomach churned, a sudden wave of nausea washing over me. Dad knew. He knew she was playing him. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. We froze, our hearts hammering against our ribs. Quick! The safe. Francesca hissed. We scrambled, replacing everything except the USB and the envelope with my name, closing the safe and barely managing to rehang the heavy painting before the study door creaked open. Mauricio. I nearly collapsed with relief at the sight of our butler. Miss Cynthia, Mrs. Bryant is awake. She's asking for you. His eyes darted to the painting, then back to me, a flicker of understanding passing between us. She's in the kitchen. At this hour? Francesca frowned. Ever the protector. I'll handle it, I said, tucking the USB and envelope into my dress pocket. Fran, can you? I'll wait here, she nodded, already pulling out her phone. Text if you need backup. The kitchen lights were harsh after the comforting darkness of the study. Lexi sat at the island counter, wrapped in an expensive silk robe, nursing what looked like scotch, a crystal tumbler clinking softly. Couldn't sleep? She asked, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes, sharp and predatory, belied the innocent tone. I was just getting some water. I moved to the sink, keeping my back to her, mentally preparing for the confrontation. We need to talk about tomorrow, darling. Ice clinked in her glass as she swirled it. Your father left some substantial debts. The mansion's upkeep alone. Really? I turned, leaning against the counter, a cold calm settling over me. That's interesting, considering Dad's last financial statement showed the estate was completely solvent. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows rose slightly. You've been going through his papers? Let's cut the act, Lexi. I pulled out my phone, pulling up the photos I'd just discovered. Care to explain these? The color drained from her face as she saw the images, her perfectly made-up mask beginning to crack. Where did you get these? Dad wasn't as oblivious as you thought, I said, my voice remaining steady despite the furious pounding in my chest. He knew about your meetings with Dan. With James. With all of them. My voice grew louder, stronger. What were you planning? To sell the mansion as soon as the will was read. You don't understand anything. She stood, her robe swishing dramatically, her composure shattering. Your father was sick long before his diagnosis. He was making terrible decisions. Risking everything Everything you wanted, you mean? I stepped closer, my gaze unwavering. Did you really think you'd get away with it? Her laugh was sharp, brittle, and utterly devoid of humor. Get away with what? Being a concerned wife trying to protect our family's interests? You're just a child playing at being grown up. A child who owns this house. I watched the words hit her like a physical blow, the color draining from her face again. That's right. Mom left it to me in a trust. Dad told me everything. You're lying. But her hand shook as she set down her glass, clattering against the marble. The will reading tomorrow will prove it. Every property document, every deed. They're all in my name. I moved toward the door, my victory feeling less sweet than I'd imagined, more like a heavy burden. Sleep well, Lexi. You might want to start packing in the morning. You ungrateful little. She caught herself, forcing a smile, a desperate attempt to regain control. We can work something out, surely? We're family, after all. Family doesn't try to sell each other's homes behind their backs. I paused at the doorway, my voice cold. And family doesn't betray the people they claim to love. Back in the study, Francesca was pacing, her phone clutched in her hand. Well? She knows. She knows. I pulled out the USB drive. But she doesn't know everything. Not yet. I plugged it into Dad's computer, and folders of financial records, emails, and surveillance photos filled the screen. Your father was thorough, Francesca whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the incriminating evidence. He was protecting me, I confirmed. I clicked through the files, each one revealing more of Lexi's schemes, her intricate web of deceit. And tomorrow, I'm going to use everything he left me to take back what's mine. What do you need me to do? Francesca asked, her voice firm. I smiled, thinking of the look on Lexi's face when she realized she'd truly lost control. Call Raphael. We're going to need all the family support we can get for what comes next. The insidious nature of Lexi's schemes, meticulously planned and executed while my father was vulnerable, is a textbook example of financial exploitation and elder abuse. This form of manipulation relies on eroding trust and isolating the victim, often under the guise of managing their affairs. The perpetrators leverage emotional leverage and access to resources, exploiting the victim's impaired judgment or reliance to illicitly gain control of their assets. Cynthia's father, despite his initial awareness, was unable to fully protect himself, highlighting the profound vulnerability created by such betrayal. The morning sun streamed through the mansion's massive windows as Raphael strode into the breakfast room, his imposing presence immediately filling the space. My cousin, older and infinitely wiser, had always been the family's voice of reason, and right now I needed that more than ever. Little soon, he said, wrapping me in a tight, comforting hug that I desperately needed. I came as soon as I got Francesca's call. Show me everything. I spread the documents across the antique dining table. Bank statements, incriminating emails, the surveillance photos. Raphael's expression darkened as he examined each piece of evidence, his jaw tightening. That conniving. He stopped mid-sentence as heels clicked on marble. Lexi appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of practiced concern, her gaze sweeping over the table. Raphael, what a lovely surprise. She moved to hug him, but he stepped back, subtly positioning himself beside me, a clear line drawn. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Lexi, he nodded coldly. I hear you've been busy making plans for the estate. Someone has to think about practical matters. She perched on a chair across from us, affecting an air of weary responsibility. Cynthia, darling, about our conversation last night. I've spoken with Dan, and he agrees we should discuss the outstanding debts immediately. What debts? Raphael's voice was sharp, cutting through her pretense. The mortgage refinancing, the renovation loans. Lexi waved her hand dismissively, as if these were minor concerns. Your uncle made some unfortunate financial decisions in his final months. I pulled out my father's last bank statement, pristine and clear. You mean these loans? The ones he took out in Dad's name while he was on heavy medication. The color drained from her face, her eyes narrowing. I don't know what you're implying. Stop lying. I slapped down copies of loan documents, bearing signatures that clearly didn't match my father's usual handwriting. Did you really think Dad wouldn't notice that? That he wouldn't protect himself and me? Everything I did was for this family. Lexi's carefully constructed composure finally cracked, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Your father was losing his grip, making terrible investments. Someone had to step in. By forging his signature? By meeting secretly with his lawyer to plan the sale of my house. I leaned forward, my voice low and dangerous. Yes, my house. Mom's trust made sure of that. The door opened again, and Dan Parker walked in, his expensive suit failing to hide his discomfort when he saw Raphael. Am I interrupting something? He asked, hovering uncertainly. Perfect timing, Raphael said, standing, his gaze piercing. Care to explain why you've been helping Lexi arrange the sale of property she doesn't own? I don't know what you're talking about. Dan's eyes darted to Lexi, a silent plea for help. Mrs. Bryant asked for standard estate planning advice. Save it. I pulled out my phone, playing a recording from one of their cafe meetings. Their voices filled the room, discussing property values and potential buyers, their conspiratorial tones chillingly clear. You recorded us. Lexi's voice shook with a mixture of rage and panic. Dad did. I stopped the playback. He knew everything, Lexi. Every meeting. Every forged document. Every betrayal. This is ridiculous. Dan straightened his tie, regaining a shred of professional bravado. These recordings won't hold up in court, but the forensic accounting report will. Raphael produced another folder, thick and damning, along with a testimony from Dad's doctors about his mental state when these loans were taken out. Want to guess how that looks for both of you? Lexi stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You ungrateful little. After everything I'd done for you? Done for me. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You mean trying to steal my inheritance? Plotting to sell my home? Using my father's illness to line your own pockets? You have no idea what it takes to maintain all this. She gestured wildly at our opulent surroundings. Your precious mother's trust? It's barely enough to keep the lights on. Someone had to think about the future. Your future, you mean? I stood slowly, my resolve unwavering. Well, think about this. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave. After that, I'm calling the police. You can't do this to me. Her voice wavered between threat and plea, a crack in her armor. Actually, she can. Raphael placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of unwavering support. The will reading this afternoon will make everything official. But make no mistake, you've lost, Lexi. The only question is how much dignity you'll have left when you walk out that door. Dan cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. I met his gaze steadily. You might want to contact the Bar Association yourself before I do. I hear they take a dim view of lawyers who help forge documents. He paled, backing toward the door. Lexi watched him go, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. 24 hours, I repeated. And Lexi, don't bother trying to take anything that isn't yours. Mauricio has a complete inventory of every item in this house. She opened her mouth to respond, but Raphael cut her off. I'd quit while you're ahead. You really don't want us looking any closer at those offshore accounts, do you? The mention of the accounts, something I hadn't even known about, made her flinch, a sudden tremor in her composure. Without another word, she turned and fled the room. Think she'll go quietly? I asked Raphael. He squeezed my shoulder. Not a chance. But don't worry. We're ready for whatever she tries next. Looking at the evidence spread across the table, I realized this was just the beginning. The real battle was still to come. The morning of the will reading, the family gathered in the grand parlor, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat between Raphael and Francesca, their presence a silent shield, watching Lexi hold court on the opposite side of the room with Dan Parker hovering nearby, a nervous shadow. She had changed into a demure, perfectly pressed black dress, playing the grieving widow to perfection, a masterclass in performative sorrow. Before we begin, the senior partner from Dad's law firm announced, his voice formal and precise, I should note that Edward made some unusual requests regarding this reading. Lexi's perfectly painted smile flickered, a tiny crack in her facade. Unusual how? He requested a video be played first. The lawyer nodded to his assistant, who set up a laptop and projector. And then my father's face filled the wall, healthy and strong, as he'd been 6 months ago. The room fell silent, every breath held. If you're watching this, Dad began, his voice resonant, filling the vast room, I'm no longer here to defend my choices, but I can explain them. He shifted in his chair, a familiar gesture. Lexi, my dear, you're probably wondering why I let you believe you'd inherit everything. The truth is, I needed to see how far you'd go. The color drained from her face, her eyes wide with dawning horror, as Dad continued, his voice calm, damning. The surveillance photos, the recorded meetings, the forged documents. I know about all of it. Every scheme, every betrayal, every attempt to steal what rightfully belongs to my daughter. Gasps filled the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Cynthia. Dad's voice softened, his gaze seeming to find mine through the screen. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything while I could, but I needed proof. Proof that's now in the hands of my lawyers, the police, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Lexi shot to her feet, her chair scraping violently against the floor. This is absurd. He was sick. Delusional. Sit down, Raphael commanded, his voice a low growl. You'll want to hear the rest. On screen, Dad held up a familiar USB drive. Everything's here. The offshore accounts, the embezzlement from my company, the conspiracy with Dan Parker to falsify legal documents. Dan stumbled backward, his face ashen, his lips moving but no sound coming out. I didn't. Save it. Francesca snapped from her seat. We have the recordings. My estate, Dad continued, his voice unwavering, including the mansion, was never mine to give away. It belongs to Cynthia, through her mother's trust. A fact you discovered, Lexi, leading to your desperate attempts to sell it before this day. The video paused, and the lawyer stood, his expression grim. There's more, but first, I'm legally obligated to inform everyone that the FBI is currently executing search warrants at multiple locations, including Mr. Parker's office and Mrs. Bryant's private residence. You can't do this to me. Lexi's composure shattered completely, her voice rising to a shriek. I made this family what it is. I kept everything running while he was dying. You mean while you were stealing from him? I stood, my voice steady, fueled by righteous anger. While you were forging his signature and plotting to sell my home?
You.
Ungrateful little. She lunged forward, but Raphael caught her arm, his grip like iron. Don't make this worse for yourself, he warned, his voice low. The lawyer cleared his throat. Shall we continue with the video? Dad's face reappeared, his eyes sad but determined. Lexi, I loved you once. I believed in you. But you chose greed over family, ambition over loyalty. The evidence has already been submitted to the authorities. By the time this video plays, your accounts will be frozen. No, she whispered, sinking into her chair, her body trembling. No, no, no. As for you, Dan. Dad's gaze seemed to fix directly on the trembling lawyer. I trusted you with my family's legal affairs. That trust was misplaced. The Bar Association has received a complete file of your activities. Dan bolted from the room, nearly knocking over the assistant in his haste. The rest of the will is straightforward, Dad concluded. Cynthia inherits everything, as her mother intended. The trust she's held since birth remains intact. And Lexi. He paused, the silence heavy. You have 24 hours to leave the premises before trespassing charges are filed. The video ended. Silence filled the room until Lexi's laugh, high and brittle, shattered it. You think this is over? She turned to me, mascara smearing beneath her eyes, her face a mask of rage and desperation. You have no idea how to run this estate, how to manage this kind of wealth. You'll fail, just like your mother would have. Don't you dare speak about my mother. I stepped closer, my voice low, dangerous. You're not half the woman she was. She built this family's legacy. You tried to steal it. Security will escort Mrs. Bryant to collect her personal belongings, the lawyer announced, his voice devoid of emotion. The FBI agents outside will want to speak with her afterward. As two men in suits appeared in the doorway, Lexi's facade crumbled completely. This isn't fair. You deserve prison, Raphael cut in, his voice cold and unforgiving. Be grateful if you only lose your money and your reputation. I watched as they led her away, her threats and protests fading down the hallway. Francesca squeezed my hand. You okay? No, I admitted, looking around the room where my family's drama had just imploded. But I will be. Dad made sure of that. The lawyer approached with a stack of documents. Miss Cynthia, there are some papers to sign. And then he lowered his voice, almost conspiratorially. There's one more video. Private. For your eyes only. I nodded, feeling the weight of my father's final messages, his protection, his love, his incredible foresight. The battle wasn't over, but at least now I knew exactly what I was fighting for. The call came at 5 a.m., jolting me awake. Meline's voice crackled through the phone, tense and urgent. Mom's making her move. She's filed an emergency injunction claiming Dad was mentally incompetent. The hearing's in 2 hours. I bolted upright. 2 hours? That's not possible. The courts don't. She's got a judge in her pocket. Meline cut in, her voice strained. Judge Harrison. They're old friends, apparently. I'm on my way. Raphael's voice, now also on the line, joined the call. Already called our lawyer. Meet at the courthouse in an hour. I threw on clothes, my hands fumbling with buttons, while dialing Francesca. Within 45 minutes, our entire team had assembled on the courthouse steps. Dawn was just breaking, casting long, eerie shadows across the empty plaza. Here they come, Francesca muttered, her eyes narrowed. Lexi strode toward us, flanked by new lawyers, and my stomach dropped. Dan Parker. She had traded her designer suits for a modest black dress, playing the grieving widow perfectly. Last chance, she called out, her voice carrying across the plaza. Drop this ridiculous vendetta, and we can work something out. Like you worked things out with your previous husbands? Meline stepped forward, her voice sharp and unforgiving. How many families have you destroyed, Mom? I'm trying to protect this family's legacy. Lexi's voice rose, theatrical. Your father was sick, making irrational decisions. Is that what you told Judge Harrison? I interrupted, my voice cutting through her performance. The same judge who vacationed with you in the Caymans last year? Her step faltered, her perfectly composed expression cracking. How did you? We found the photos, Raphael said, holding up his phone. A gallery of tropical beaches and familiar faces, along with the offshore account transfers. Interesting timing, right before he handled your divorce from husband number 2. The courthouse doors opened, and a clerk emerged. The judge will see you now. Inside the courtroom, tension crackled like static electricity as both sides took their positions. Judge Harrison, a stern-faced man in his 60s, peered down at us from the bench, his gaze unblinking. "Mrs. Bryant," he began, his voice devoid of warmth. "You claim Edward was mentally incompetent when he made these videos and changed his will?" "Yes, Your Honor." Lexi dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her performance flawless. The medication affected his judgment. He became paranoid, making wild accusations. "Like these?" I nodded to our lawyer, who projected images onto the courtroom screen. Photos of Lexi meeting Judge Harrison in casual, compromising settings, bank statements showing suspicious transfers between their accounts, a timeline of their shared vacations. The judge's face darkened, a flush creeping up his neck. "What is the meaning of this?" "The meaning, Your Honor," our lawyer stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant, "is that we have evidence of judicial misconduct, and we've already submitted it to the State Ethics Board." "This is outrageous." Lexi's lawyer, a fresh-faced man clearly in over his head, jumped up. "These accusations are supported by extensive documentation," Meline interrupted, walking forward with a thick folder, her presence unexpected and impactful. "Including records of your private meetings with my mother to coordinate this emergency hearing." Judge Harrison's hands gripped his gavel tightly, his knuckles white. "I will not be blackmailed." "No blackmail," I said clearly, my voice ringing through the silent courtroom. "Just the truth. About Lexi's pattern of fraud. About your role in covering up her previous cases. About everything." "I move to dismiss," Lexi's lawyer started, his voice cracking. "Sit down." Dan suddenly spoke up, his voice barely a whisper, but cutting through the tension. All eyes turned to him. "It's over, Lexi. I'm not perjuring myself for you." "Dan." She whirled on him, her facade shattering completely. "After everything we did. Everything we did was illegal," he said tiredly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "And I've already given my statement to the FBI." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Lexi lunged at Dan, screaming accusations and threats, her polished image completely gone. Security rushed forward, pulling her away as she thrashed, a wild animal cornered. "Order." Judge Harrison slammed his gavel, but his authority had evaporated. Two men in suits entered the courtroom, badges visible. "Judge Harrison," one announced, his voice calm but authoritative, "we need you to come with us." He turned to Lexi, now restrained. "And Mrs. Bryant, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted judicial manipulation." As they led Lexi away in handcuffs, she fixed me with a venomous glare. "You think this is victory? You've destroyed everything." "No," I replied calmly, meeting her gaze. "You did that yourself. Every scheme, every lie, every betrayal, those were your choices." "Mrs. Bryant," the FBI agent interrupted, leading her past me. "You have the right to remain silent." "I'll never be silent," she shrieked, her voice echoing down the hall as they escorted her out. "This family will regret this. All of you." In the sudden quiet of the courtroom, Meline touched my arm. "You okay?" I watched through the window as they led my stepmother to a waiting car, Judge Harrison following in separate custody. I think I finally am." "It's really over?" Francesca whispered, almost as if she couldn't believe it. "Almost," Raphael corrected. "We still need to clean up the mess. The legal challenges, the press, the financial tangles." "We'll handle it," I said, feeling stronger than I had in weeks. "Together." As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions, but for the first time since Dad's death, I felt no fear, no uncertainty. Just clarity. "Miss Cynthia," one reporter called out, "any comment on your stepmother's arrest?" I paused on the steps, my family flanking me, a solid, unwavering force. "Just this," I said, my voice clear and steady. "The truth always comes out, no matter how long it takes, no matter who tries to bury it. Justice finds a way." This entire scenario, from Lexi's desperate legal maneuver to the judge's complicity and Dan Parker's eventual defection, speaks to the social dynamics of collusion and the breakdown of institutional integrity. When powerful individuals like Lexi leverage personal connections and financial incentives to subvert legal processes, it creates a cascade effect, compelling others to participate or turn a blind eye. Dan Parker's shift, driven by fear of legal repercussions, highlights the conditional nature of such allegiances. It underscores how fragile systems of justice can be when personal gain outweighs professional ethics, but also how a thorough investigation can unravel even the most entrenched corruption. The autumn breeze rustled through the mansion's sprawling gardens as I unlocked the front door, letting Meline in with her boxes. After Lexi's conviction and sentencing, 15 years for fraud and conspiracy, my half-sister had finally agreed to move back home. "Still feels strange being here," she said, setting down a box in the foyer, her voice a little breathless. "Good strange, though." "Miss Cynthia?" Mauricio appeared, his normally stoic expression tight with contained excitement. "The investigators have finished with the safe room. They found something you should see." We followed him to Dad's study, where Raphael already waited with Francesca. On the desk, illuminated by the soft lamplight, lay a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. It was hidden behind a false panel, Raphael explained, his voice hushed. "Your mother's diary." My hands trembled as I opened it. Mom's elegant handwriting filled the pages, including a letter dated just before her death. "Read it out loud," Francesca urged softly. I cleared my throat, my voice a little unsteady. "My dearest Cynthia, if you're reading this, you've finally discovered the truth about our home, your inheritance, and hopefully, your own strength. I created the trust not just to protect our family's wealth, but to protect you from those who would exploit it. Your father knows my wishes. The mansion isn't just a house, it's a testament to love, family, and perseverance. I built it from nothing, just as you'll need to rebuild after I'm gone. Trust your instincts. Trust your true family. And most importantly, trust yourself. All my love, Mom." "She knew," Meline whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Somehow, she knew someone like my mother would come along. A knock at the study door made us turn. Dan Parker stood there, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes rather than his usual expensive suit. "The FBI finished interviewing me," he said, his voice flat. "I've told them everything. About Lexi's previous cons, about Judge Harrison's involvement. All of it. Why did you help her in the first place?" I asked, my voice calm. He sighed, leaning against the door frame, a defeated man. "Because I was stupid and greedy. And because she convinced me you'd never be capable of running the estate yourself." He met my eyes, a flicker of genuine regret in his. "I was wrong about everything." "Yes, you were." I stood. "The Bar Association's decision, disbarred, as expected. I'll be testifying against the other conspirators next week." "Good." I gestured to Mauricio. "Show him out, please." As Dan left, Raphael picked up Mom's diary. "Your mother was an incredible woman. This journal, it's full of business strategies, family history, even warnings about people like Lexi. She built an empire," Francesca added, her voice full of admiration. "Well, everyone underestimated her. Just like they underestimated you." The doorbell rang, and Mauricio returned a moment later with a delivery. "The new security system, Miss Cynthia. And the contractor is here about the renovations." "Go," Meline smiled. "Be the lady of the house. We'll help unpack my things." In the entrance hall, I found myself staring at the family portrait. Dad, Mom, me as a child. The space where Lexi's portrait had hung was now empty, waiting for a new family photo. "Miss Cynthia?" The contractor waited patiently, a respectful presence. "About the changes you wanted?" "Yes." I turned to him, a vision clear in my mind. "We'll restore everything to its original design. My mother's design, but with some modern upgrades." "And the East Wing?" He checked his notes. "Converting it to a women's shelter?" "Exactly," I confirmed, a profound sense of purpose settling over me. My mother built this house to protect her family. Now it's going to protect others too. Later that evening, we gathered in the garden. Meline, Raphael, Francesca, even Mauricio, joining us with glasses of champagne. To new beginnings, Raphael proposed, his voice warm. And old wisdom, I added, thinking of Mom's journal. And family, Meline raised her glass, a genuine smile on her face. Real family. The setting sun painted the mansion's windows gold, just as it had when Mom first designed it. I could almost hear her voice in the evening breeze, approving of everything we'd accomplished. You know, Francesca said, her phone in hand, your story's been trending online. Daughter outsmarts gold-digging stepmother. People are calling you an inspiration. They're calling her a badass, Meline corrected with a laugh. I just did what Mom would have done, I said, feeling a quiet strength deep within me. Protected what matters. Protected family. Speaking of protection, Raphael pulled out his phone, showing us a news alert. Lexi's previous victims are coming forward. Looks like she'll be facing more charges. Good. I stood, walking to the garden's edge, where Mom's favorite roses still bloomed, their fragrance sweet and comforting. Let her face everything she's done. We're done living in her shadow. To karma, Meline raised her glass again. To justice, Raphael added. To family, I finished, feeling the familiar weight of Mom's ring. Ring on my finger, Dad's watch on my wrist, and the warmth of my chosen family beside me. The real kind. As night fell over the mansion, our home, I finally felt at peace. Not because of victory or revenge, but because I discovered what Mom knew all along. True strength comes from protecting what you love, and real family stands together, no matter what storms come. What would you sacrifice to protect your family's legacy, and at what point does that protection become a betrayal of the very values you claim to uphold?